Alexandra, one of the strongest women on Earth, survived the deadly storm.
You understand that you are dying.
And life kept challenging her after that.
3 children, I'm on my own, no money, no light, no water.
How many kilometers do you run a day?
I run 10 usually, more or less. But of course it's always uphill because we have mountains here.
How much uphill?
About 500 meters. Sometimes I run 20 kilometers. That's usually in the summer.
And how long was your most challenging race?
The most challenging one was in Patagonia, Chile. Around 800 kilometers. The toughest race on planet Earth. Patagonia Expedition Race, officially. So technically it's a team all around, several types of activities. It's mountain bike, kayaking, and we were actually going in ocean kayaks along the Strait of Magellan.
Wow.
Then trekking, and we had a bit of climbing technique.
And how much was the cumulative elevation gain?
It's hard to tell, we were crossing the Andes. I don't remember, but a lot. So this isn't a marked route, you navigate by maps and a compass. GPS is not allowed. It's all based on orienteering. 4 members in a team, 3 men, 1 woman. Your goal is to cover this distance as quickly as possible.
You told me about the race in a nutshell, but how long did it take?
The winning time, our time, was 7.5 days. This is a race where just getting to the finish line is awesome. But if you won, then you're simply out of this world. And we did win this race. And I'm the only Russian woman, in general, who won this race. It's truly a race for survival, which is why it's the most challenging race on the planet, because not everyone makes it to the finish line. We were in the lead from the first section, it was biking for 100 kilometers. After bikes, they were kayaks, 100 kilometers more. We were coming from the Perito Moreno Glacier and going down to the Strait of Magellan when a storm hit. It was so scary, really. We were in the lead, well, just a bit of wind, some waves, whitecaps, it's okay, but then a real storm started. And the boat capsized. There were 2 of us inside, and we were turned over by a wave. And then somehow we managed to get back into the boat and started to fight for our lives. Because a real storm started. We couldn't do anything. It was just a great gust, a vast pipe of wind, and we were just blown away somewhere. And the only thing that saved us, why we survived, was that the boat had 2 sealed compartments on the bow and on the stern, and one of them had a leak and water got inside. So if the boat had stayed on the surface, we would have turned over again and again. And because one compartment had a leak, the boat held like a float and it didn't sink. And thanks to this, that's the only thing that kept us alive. And the waves were so great that you could close your mouth, pinch your nose, but the water would still push its way through. It's impossible to describe. Even if the wave doesn't go over and hit you on the head, it's still easy to drown. You can still drown even if you're not in the water. Because of the sheer power and strength, water is definitely not the element for humans. Seriously, it's just like, I don't know, in a washing machine. The wind, everything's turning, churning the water. It didn't last a few minutes, but went on for hours. We spent 5 hours in that storm. It was getting dark, it was 11 p.m. And the noise was so loud, the sound of water. We were sitting this far apart and we couldn't hear each other. To be able to hear, we were, Misha! He was, what are we gonna do? Seriously, I said goodbye to everyone because really, you understand that you are dying. You realize that this is the process of dying. Because it's getting dark, we are exhausted, the water is cold, we either pass out and drown, or just drown because we are exhausted. And I was praying to God, "Dear God, I'll be a good girl. I don't wanna die." I'm smiling now. Back then it was different. What else could you do? There was nothing you could do. You could only ask God to help you. And so I was talking to God, and the wind changed. Really, this wasn't a movie, real life. The wind began to blow toward the shore. That was it. We were just blown to the shore in an hour or two, and we spent some more time in the water because we really couldn't stand up. We were just like two herrings flapping around.
For how long?
Not that long, of course, about 5 minutes, but it was so memorable because this is the land and that's it. We are saved. We don't care where we are. Patagonia, Strait of Magellan. It's not clear where, but it's the land.
You're living in Cloud Cuckoo Land. That's what young Alexandra used to hear in her childhood when she was dreaming about her future life. As we all already know, the growing up process hardwires us and causes certain actions in adult life. Tell us about your childhood. How did it affect the adult Alexandra?
In my childhood, there was a system that you had to fit into. It was a real brainwashing, special mindset. The adults around you, the mentors, the teachers, were convinced you that a human being is nobody, that to achieve something great, this was done by some great people. They are different. They were born different. And that's why they achieved something great. I used to go rock climbing. I was 10, and the first woman from the USSR to climb Everest was from our club, Katya Ivanova. And when she came back, I saw that she was just a human standing next to me, just like me. And she did this amazing thing. This was one of the examples in my life. I mean, I've met a lot of extraordinary people in my life. And every little bit contributed to the thought that you can live a different life. That's it. And here it is right next to you. And another significant event for me, I was around 17. Other types of television started to appear. And there was a cool reporter who, it turns out, influenced me. He did unusual stories for that time. He showed guys from Yekaterinburg who looked absolutely crazy at that time. Misha Pershin and Andrei Ivanov were there. I just watched them wide-eyed. They were climbing some mountains, coming up with some adventures. Andrei, he jumped off some waterfalls and everything. They participated in some adventure race somewhere in New Zealand, traveled for 6 or 7 days. They hallucinated. This was the craziest adventure you could imagine. And they took part in it. And I thought, wow, these guys, they're just doing what they want. So my worldview started to expand. I realized there were people who did things like this. And this took root, deeper and stronger, and crystallized into a great wish. I want this. I want to be like them.
Years later, fate stepped in, and she encountered the guys absolutely unexpectedly when she worked as a journalist on TV.
I was working on TV, and there was some kind of competition for extreme journalists. I joined. We went there. It was around St. Petersburg. There were contests, a meetup of these extreme journalists, and that's where I first saw Misha Pershin. And of course, I could never even dream of being in a team with him. I was like, oh my God, it's him. And after that, they asked me, will you come to Patagonia? I was like, God, of course I'll come to Patagonia. I started training, but I actually had to work too. I had to do both somehow. And people asked how, it's impossible. Well, I cycled to work to the studio, there and back. Then I went to rowing practice after work, 25 to the studio, then work, then 25 to the rowing practice.
Kilometers?
Yes, kilometers. On studded tires in winter, in the rain, it didn't matter. Yeah, then we rode for an hour and a half, then 25 kilometers more back home. I came home like this. Many people haven't known me for that long, say, this is how you were born, this coming first and beating all the men, you were born that way. Guys, in fact, it's all thanks to training. When you train physically and get tougher, your mind also is getting tougher as well. The Patagonia race was the best. It was like flying into space. We ran across those Patagonian pampas. You get to the Andes, you cross the Andes, all the rocks, the glaciers, totally wild places. We didn't just see people, we saw no animals either. This is just concentrated, juicy life that, despite all the tiredness, you are just crazy happy. Then with my first husband, we created a team for adventure racing, the best in Russia. We had Nike and Garmin as our sponsors. We had no equals in Russia. We were the strongest. Nobody matched us since. And we traveled around the world championships. Andorra, Spain, Sweden, Norway, Brazil, we went racing there. It was very saturated. Then our son was born. In the end, my first husband and I divorced.
Alexandra won and survived so many times attending adventures racing, so when she quit, life had not noticed that and went on testing and challenging her. Let's talk about life after racing, when you first experienced difficulties, not on a physical but on an emotional level. Tell us about your first divorce and how it ended.
Well, it all went wrong straight away. I only realized this afterwards. I can talk about it smiling now because it's all behind. All the tears were shed and things like that. Life actually tries to show you things that you get wrong by giving you people who show you these things in an exaggerated way. And it usually leads to pain. Back then I thought that the whole world is pure evil. I'm serious, I'm talking seriously. And your goal is to survive in this evil somehow. And accordingly, I chose the man I would never choose now. In the end, we got divorced, and it just happened that my ex-husband, well, using force and lies, took our son abroad. We're all waiting for Andrusha. I already had a daughter. He's supposed to come back. My elder daughter, she has always loved Andrusha so much. Mommy, when is Andrusha coming? When is he coming? And I text my ex-husband, when are you coming? And he replies, we are in Sweden. We'll come back in 6 months or more. Well, of course, to say that I was shocked is to say nothing. I felt terrible. I was just shaking. Just physically shaking. Not because I was insulted, but because I realized that someone could do something like this, and it happened to me. Not in a movie, you realize that this is a part of your life. Actually, it was a greater tragedy for my elder daughter. It was, well, such a blow for her. She just couldn't understand how come there was no brother anymore. She slept in his bed, didn't eat. She would wear his clothes. It was like somebody cut off one of your limbs. How would that make you feel? Okay, suppose they live in Sweden, if they like it, if the boy likes it, but I want to see him, and the child needs it. But my ex thought they were doing just fine and they didn't really need a mother. It was Andrei's birthday, and on this day we could talk at least on the phone, at least there was this option. And he said that he was alone. The father went on business somewhere for a week and left him with a nanny, and he was alone. And then again, I was just shaking. And I was, what could I do? All these questions are really solved by publicity. It's unpleasant, but it really helps. My husband used to be an athlete, and we have a main website for all the sports people in the country. There were no social networks, it was a soul cry. And I just wrote everything on this forum. Described the situation. He took away our son, and we don't see each other. I'm scared. I'm not comfortable to write all this publicly, but that's it. Nothing else can be done. What could I do? Just forget about my child? There was a big commotion. Things were really heating up for a day. And then my husband turned up on the forum, and he wrote, I just wanted to do this, and I took him away. Meaning that my opinion and our son's opinion, child's opinion, didn't matter to him at all, honestly. And when other respectable people who he respected, when they said, wow, you, Ivan, are a piece of shit, they really did say that. And only then something clicked in his head, that he did something wrong. And a year later, Andrei came to Russia.
What advice would you give to young girls and women going through similar situations today, who are unsure of what to do, feeling desperate at the beginning of this long journey?
Well, there are many of them now.
Way too many.
Way too many. You just need to calm down. You need to learn to calm yourself down, because if you're gonna cry, cut yourself or scream, apart from ruining yourself, there won't be much happening really. Because all of this is just self-destruction. And secondly, if the child sees it, the child will go crazy. For him, parents are gods, a protective wall, a defense. It's a worldview. If this God is shaking, then what's happening to the world? I mean, children may have serious mental problems and general life issues after this. Cry, well, go for a walk, drink a little, and that's it, cut it out. And sit down and imagine, there was a shipwreck and you are on a deserted island. What do? If you want to carry on living, you have to stop worrying, not jump off a cliff into the water. Right? If you want to live, you have to go and build yourself a house. It's just simple work. After a while, I got married. The second time, he was an athlete too. We had 3 daughters together, but eventually we got divorced too.
And after all hardships, Alexandra ended up at such a beautiful place where she finally, happily settled down.
I've always loved nature more than Gucci handbags.
How did you end up at this magnificent place, and what were your initial impressions and emotions?
Well, I always wanted to visit Caucasus when I was a child, the mountains. And in June 2015, I came here with children, and we were here. And I was really stunned when we first came to this canyon. This was like Avatar movie for me. This is Pandora. It was June, there were green leaves, some vines hanging, some ivy, some fluff floating in the air.
Even now it looks otherworldly.
Even now in spring it looks beautiful. And at this wonderful moment, I get a text from my husband. Get the children out of the apartment and yourself. Just get out. I was told afterwards that I should have gotten on my knees and begged, don't kick me out, I'm unemployed, don't have my own place, I have 3 children and nowhere to go.
So this was manipulation.
It was manipulation, but I took it at face value. He said leave, well, I had to leave. And I really was thinking for 6 years where to go, because I didn't like it in Moscow. We've been to many places, but there were no places like, wow, I want to live here. And here I am standing in this canyon, looking at it and realizing I want to live here.
Right on this spot?
Yeah, right on this spot. I was lying on that rock and thinking, I don't have money, I don't have a job, no place to live, but I want to live here. And I stopped this train of thought and thought, okay, what do I do? And the answer, well, a thought that came to me, just move here. When you ask yourself a question, the thought that we generate, like how to make a soup, how to drive a car, how much is 2 times 2, stuff like that. But the thoughts, there's an expression, it came to mind, just came to me. We didn't generate it, we caught it somehow. As far as I understand, our brain has a function to receive information like an antenna. And this information is really useful for us. We can and we should use it. When you ask a question in your mind and get a mental answer, I mean, afterwards, I used it and I still use it.
Who do you believe gives you the answer at the moment?
I don't know.
Could you make a guess?
Well, there may be different options. Well, I say I'm talking to God. And we came back to Moscow. I packed all the stuff, packed all the children's stuff into a moving truck, including a sewing machine, my snowboard, 3 bikes,
Oars?
the oars. We bought tickets, took the train and left. I can't say it was easy. When we came, it really turned out to be just a tourist base, where it's very hard to rent something long term. There's only daily rent. And in the first 6 months, we moved 6 times. It was really terrible. Piles of stuff, children, and I took every job available. But at that point, I wanted this so much that I was ready to die here, but not return to Moscow. The first year and a half were really hard. But the thing that keeps you going in the moments like these is realizing that you are living your dream. Every morning I woke up and saw the mountains in the window, and it was not going to end. This is me living my dream. And this air, it's just getting so thick, and you feel great. Yes, it was difficult to find a home, but we kind of found it eventually. We got a house. It appeared quite magically too. This is the house that we have lived in for 6 years now. When we moved into it, there was no water, no electricity, the roof was leaking. The place itself was amazing, the forest, the mountain view. 3 children, I'm on my own, no money, no light, no water. Andrusha came to visit from Sweden. He went orienteering here, and there was this chance to enter a competition. The entrance fee was 3,500 rubles. And all I had was 3,500 rubles, nothing else. Literally zero, total zero. But he wanted it so much, and he visited so rarely, and he was so excited. And I thought, all right. There was this unfinished guest house. We started renting it out, just to have some money to buy food, for a reasonable price. I really want to thank all the guests who came to visit us then. The conditions were far from perfect, but I guess the atmosphere was good. We got insane ratings on Booking, 9 point something. There was a shared toilet for 2 rooms. The whole construction was so weird, but everyone enjoyed it. Well, these were some interesting times. I couldn't get a loan. I got 2 credit cards instead because I had no job, nothing. 2 credit cards. We renovated inside first, as much as we could afford. It was really scary, but again, I had nothing, no other options. And we started rent out at a different price, and little by little, gradually, about a year ago, we could more or less catch a breath. I could afford to go snowboarding somewhere, bought myself a split board. Even buying new bed sheets for ourselves was a cause for celebration because we bought it for ourselves, not for the guest house. That was the money source we actually lived on. Please come in. Welcome. And the house, and the pretty view. Will you show the view? And our cool little forest.
Ну, не кажется. И он такой большой, он подходит и просто так полностью. Делает тарелку.
Very often, when people want something, they turn on their brain. They start thinking, how? How can we make it work?
Start calculating?
Yes, calculating. No, it won't work. I won't go. I won't do it, even though I really want to. And when you start thinking logically, you turn on your brain, which works as a calculator, and that's a mistake. And your path, you stop following it. You've got this path, it's straight, and the thoughts that you get, they point to this straight path. But you take a step off it and you start going in circles instead of just going through all the things that are meant for you in this life. And you start doing some bullshit and waste your life away. And so God or our soul have to return us to our path the hard way. We're like a rainbow. All the colors are different, but together we are in harmony. Meaning we all fill some empty spaces with our talents. So you really need to do what you actually enjoy. It's just all changes need time. It's essential to remember that. People think it didn't work out for me, that's it. But all changes need time. You have to really invest in it. Your goal is to realize your talent and gather maximum information. Do something good in life and just do what you like. Get the pleasure out of it and make money out of it. That's it. Work hard and enjoy. Oh God.
Oh God, are you okay?
Yes, yes. With time, society, education, and opinion of others, it all wraps around you like cabbage leaves. And then your goal is the opposite, to tear it all off, become the person you were born. And only then you start living your real life. Some people change at 70 and start living their own lives.
So it doesn't matter when.
Yes, it doesn't matter when. Age doesn't matter.
What do you think endurance is?
Endurance is maybe a combination of several traits: temper, willpower, and endurance is built up
How?
by work, by exercise, nothing else. You keep pushing your boundaries further and wider. Most people didn't even try to push them. Oh, I got tired, that's it, I won't go there. Oh, I failed, I won't go any further. You don't face challenges that you can't overcome. You just have to think about what you can do. In this case, endurance is what? Ability to survive? Who is a strong woman? I don't even like that word. By the way, I ran 2 races being pregnant. One was the World Championship with Andrusha, it was Andorra, Spain. More than 10,000 meters overall elevation gain in a day. I was worried, but Andrusha made it. And the second one in Brazil, I got invited, it was a World Series race around 600 kilometers. I was 1.5 months pregnant, but gosh, such an opportunity. But we quit about halfway through, one of our guys had problems.
And you didn't.
And I didn't. I didn't tell them I was pregnant. I thought, well, didn't want to disappoint them. And they were like, that's it, we quit, we can make it. We got sores. I was like, yes, sure. Yes, we're sure. Well, okay, given that I'm 2 months pregnant. And they felt ashamed. Of course, the race in Brazil was very tough. The stages were 100 kilometers long. 100 trekking, 100 biking, 60 kayaking, and it was really hot. And I thought, if the baby is okay, then I'll give birth to some Terminator. But it was my amazing Lela, a truly wonderful girl. Very delicate. How are you? Everything all right? Yes.
Tell us about your mom. What is she like?
Mom is nice, cool.
What makes her so cool?
She's cool, she goes up the mountains. What makes her cool? Everything. She almost drowned in the Strait of Magellan.
She's also a champion.
A champion, yes. Usually I run 100 kilometers every day. Every day, 3 times.
And how many laps around the equator do you do in a month?
Oh, I'm not counting already, not counting.